I wish I could be doing what they're doing. All right, let's just test it out. So I want to talk about something that I feel like most musicians and freelancers, if not all musicians and freelancers, go through, and that is something called the imposter syndrome. I feel like I've dealt with it multiple times in my career, so if anyone can speak to it, I feel like I can speak to it. So for those of you who are new to the channel, feel free to like and subscribe. As the kids say, smash the like button. But if you're new to the channel and you don't know me personally, my name is Jesse, and I do music for a living. It looks different from day to day. Some days I do bass tracks and record those. Some days I do guitar tracks. Some days I do producing. Is this even recording? Okay, it is, good. So it's been cool to be able to make a living doing what I love to do, music. But there have been times where a thought will creep in where I think, am I really good enough to do this? Am I good enough to make it in Nashville? Am I good enough to produce this record? Am I good enough, period? I feel like we live in a world where Instagram is very easily accessible. So as you're scrolling and you're seeing the highlights of everybody's life and their success and their highlight reel basically, I mean, you're sitting on the couch, maybe eating some chips or something, scrolling through, and you're like, man, this dude's in Las Vegas, or this dude's in Europe touring, and I'm here, I'm just me.
Just Harry.
I wish I could be doing what they're doing. And so I think it's just natural for everybody to kind of see what someone else is doing and view our lives through that lens, holding up what we're doing currently in the moment to something that is the highlight of that person's year. And we do this exponentially. I mean, you know, especially living in Nashville, all your friends are musicians, and you're just seeing post after post about all these incredible things that people are up to. When in reality, most people are posting those things on the sofa as well. They're taking the picture in the moment, going in and editing things and selecting the coolest picture that came from that run of shows or whatever and posting that while they're in the same position that you are, eating potato chips on the couch while watching The Amazing Race or something on TV. When you suffer from this imposter syndrome, you're thinking, am I good enough? Am I actually good enough to do this thing? And I think the question is flawed in a lot of ways. First of all, it's really vague. Are you good enough? What does that mean?
What does this mean?
What is the standard of good? For example, I can view my guitar playing, which I love listening to pop music, jazz, R&B. That's the kind of stuff that I started playing on guitar. Rock and roll music. But when I hear someone just shredding country, dude, I can't do that. Like the chicken picking stuff, like I never learned how to do that. And so I can fake my way through it, but I truly know deep within me that chicken picking is not a skill set that I have. It sounds super awesome and it's super technical, but I'm not good enough to play that. But I am good enough to play what I know, and if I'm not playing with a country artist, like, then yeah, I'm good enough. But if you're holding yourself and you're holding your whole skill set and saying, is this good enough for, it's a flawed question. So I would encourage you to start thinking about this imposter syndrome in a different light. I was talking with a producer friend of mine a couple years ago, and I was kind of just asking him, you know, like, how did you find your voice in music? I think that, you know, we hear Eddie Van Halen solos and we're like, that's Eddie Van Halen, I know that. Or, you know, you hear a vocal run and you're like, there's only a few people who could do that, like Mariah Carey or Ariana Grande. You know what I mean? It's like very specific styles of things. So I was asking him how he found his voice in music, and he gave me some great advice. He was just like, your voice is your voice. Whatever you bring to the table is what you bring to the table. So it sounds elementary, but I think it shifted some things in my thinking that actually went super deep. I was kind of like, oh, My voice is my voice. What is that? What does that mean? Well, I have experiences that other people don't have, and I have skill sets that other people don't have. And so my voice in music isn't necessarily, finding a note that nobody else has played. It's just like what comes naturally to me because it's me, not you. Whatever you find natural, I would not find natural to play because that's not what I would naturally go to. Every experience you've had and every skill you've developed along the way kind of leads to your voice. So playing a G chord isn't any different from me to somebody else. My fingers might play it the exact same way, but I've played that G chord on stage with dozens of artists, maybe hundreds. I don't know. I'm not that old, but I've played quite a bit. And just thinking of all those tours and all of those sessions that I've done playing that same chord, and kind of the feedback I've gotten from other musicians playing different voicings of that chord, and like I might hear something and I'm like, oh, in a session 3 years ago this guy did something really cool when this progression was going on. Maybe I'll kind of emulate that, and that turns into, over time, your tool belt of things that make you. So I mean, in the audio world as well, you might have a set of samples and plugins that you start to develop into your sound because you're like, oh, I've seen this work before, and oh, that guy showed me a cool kick sample that I mixed with this. And like in developing your skills, it's not about are you good enough to do a gig or whatever. It's like, how do you improve and do better continually? How do you continue to develop your voice? Because you might only need 4 chords for a gig, and you might be the person that they call because you're fun to hang out with and they want to, it's a week-long run and it's going to be really exhausting, but you're fun to hang out with, and they're like, can you play 4 chords? Do you want to come with us and hang out? All of a sudden it's not about, was he good enough to do that? So it's at that point, it's about the hang. At that point, am I good enough isn't even a question. It's let's have fun. Let's do this. And so another thing with imposter syndrome, I feel like a lot of people get down on themselves, or they second guess themselves, after asking, am I good enough? It's like, well, I could never do whatever because there's so many other people doing that. So, I mean, I play bass. It's very easy for me to see bass players who are insanely good, have great technique, and I kind of learned just by listening to music. I've never had a bass lesson, and so like I kind of came into playing bass because people were asking me, hey, we don't have a bass player, can you play? So just in my career, I've definitely dealt with imposter syndrome multiple times. So for those of you who don't know me from college, you might know me as a bass player. And for those who knew me in college, you know me as a guitar player. And got my first guitar at 8 years old and played all the way up to high school, my senior year of high school. And then I got a scholarship to go to school and play guitar and did that for 4 years. And then all of a sudden I moved to Nashville, had a couple of guitar gigs, but then people started calling me for bass, and I was like, okay, bass is cool. I guess I'll buy a bass so I can play bass whenever someone asks me. And then it turned into a thing. Like, I started playing bass in bands and started getting more bass calls. And so I kind of like fell into playing bass, and there's so many moments that I've had just kind of questioning whether or not I was good enough to play bass. And this is already, mind you, I'm living in Nashville, doing this for a living, and I'm questioning whether or not I'm good enough to be a bass player because I didn't grow up playing bass, and I'd never had any formal lessons, and I'm just watching other dudes just kill it, and I'm like, am I good enough? And I'm here, and I'm doing this for a living. It doesn't make any sense, but when we're viewing ourselves as imposters, that can kind of get into your brain. But when you shift the thinking into not am I good enough, but what am I good at? What are the things that I bring to the table for people, and lean into it. Get better at what I do. Get better at playing bass. Actually, like, watch some tutorials and buy some pedals and dive into tone and all that kind of stuff. Like, actually get better. But anyone can go through it. Like, people who do mixing and producing and playing and touring for a living all kind of go through this imposter syndrome. I just want you to know it is okay to feel and question, am I good enough? But I also want to let you know that it's not about being good enough. Find your niche, or niche, or however you say it.
Niche.
What are you good at? Lean into it, and then just do it. Go for it. Don't let imposter syndrome get between you and what you ultimately want to do. I think that a lot of people will view the am I good enough to do things and then answer that question with no, I'm not good enough. Or they won't answer it and just kind of dread the thought of maybe I'm not good enough, so I'm not gonna answer am I good enough, because what if I'm not? Not all of us are going to be touring musicians or session musicians full time, but that doesn't mean you can't do a session or you can't go on a tour or learn how to do those things. And if it's something that clicks and people enjoy hanging out with you, and you're in the right place for opportunity to happen, then who knows where it could go. But I think you can take the pressure off and say, am I good enough is not a good question. It's so funny because I look at what I do now, and so much of it is stuff that at one point I feel like I felt like a fake. Engineering my first session, the producer had to step out and he's like, you know how to run Pro Tools, right? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've done it at my house by myself, never for this situation. He's like, you run this for a second, I'll be right back. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Or the first time I was asked to play bass on a stage in front of thousands of people, and I was like, I know the notes, but I feel a little bit out of my depth here, where am I really getting into this? Is this, but I mean, all those experiences go into where I'm at now. So yes, I had to run Pro Tools before I got to that session with all those people, but then I kept doing it and I kept getting better at it, and people would ask my opinion of things. And so I was able to develop, relationships with people where we're bouncing ideas off of each other. And yeah, all those experiences play into who you are and what your voice is in music. So maybe it's a challenge. Maybe stop asking, are you good enough to do something? And maybe there's something that you're viewing right now and saying, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this. Well, one, it doesn't mean that you will always not be good enough to do it, even if you're not good enough to do it right now. I just know that everybody deals with imposter syndrome. Let those experiences that take you out of your depth do something for you. Let those experiences seep into you and create your voice in whatever you do creatively, and let it develop your voice. No one's born a professional musician, So take that for what it's worth. Continue to grow, continue to cultivate your talents. So anyway, it's like 2 a.m. It is literally 2:06. I don't know why I'm still up, but YouTube, thank you for joining me. And again, if you're new to the channel or you like this video or something, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. I think you hit a bell to get notified whenever I upload a video. That'd be cool. And like the video, share it with your friends, whatever. You don't have to, but I hear it helps. Anyway, thank you. Yeah.